Oh, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another great edition of Cocktails with Cav, where we bring you incredible interviews with indie authors, entertainers, and artists. It has been a heck of a week, I tell you what. We've had a lot going on, had a lot of fun, but look, so glad you could join us. Please, by all means, check the links in the description. Consider supporting the show. Buy us a cheap cup of coffee on our Buy Me a Coffee link. That's all it takes. Or even check out our merch page. We have some incredible swag, adding more every day to our merch page. Great way to support the show. But enough of all that. Look, I tell you what a week. We're in the throes of presidential election season leading up to November. Of course, we had the Democratic National Convention this week and the Republican National Convention prior to that. It's just an incredible political landscape going on. And tonight's author, I got to know him on X, an incredible guy, great to interact with. And we're going to talk about his incredible book, Dethrone Davos. So by all means, please help me welcome to the stage the great author, Teddy G. Pierce. Oh, Teddy, so glad you could finally make it to Cocktails with Cav, buddy. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing great. Pleasure's all mine.
Oh, man, where are you coming from? Is it an undisclosed location or? No.
I don't like to triangulate too much, but coming to you from the Republic of Texas.
Nice. Yes, my sister Gulf Coast state. I'm happy to have you.
All right.
Oh no, but man, I tell you, I all the chaos going on in the political landscape, especially. I tell you what, X is my new favorite platform for all the political news. But we're going through. I tell you what, this presidential election cycle is going to give us all a headache. But man,
if we're lucky.
Yeah, that's it. But I tell you what, your book out in July, just came out in July, Dethrone Davos. I was fascinated by it. And I tell you what, we're going to talk about it a little bit, but we'd love for the audience to get to know the creators, man. So Teddy, please tell us a little about yourself and, a little of your background and how you got into writing this incredible work we have out.
Yeah, so like I said, from Texas, born and raised, spent a short hiatus away in the communist-occupied territory of California, but grew up. Everybody thinks that people from Texas all ride horses everywhere and do that kind of stuff, but actually did grow up farming and ranching, having a kind of an agrarian background growing up. And so that was something that I know was very formative for me. Certainly now as we're through the looking glass in these crazy times and, people don't know, they think that food comes from the grocery store, right? And lumber comes from Home Depot. So, but yeah, grew up farming and ranching and, just trying to figure out things, when you work on a farm or ranch, you're a mechanic and, you have to be a salesman and you just have to do a little bit of everything as you basically bring things to market and do what you got to do to get by. So, but yeah, when I moved away, went to college for a little bit, didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I took several victory laps. And I always say college only took me 4 years and a decade, but I finally finished it.
That's right. It's like my daughter. She's a master of masters. No.
Yeah, that's right. So, but yeah, I finally found philosophy and really fell in love with the subject. And kind of a methodical guy to begin with, and so philosophy really appealed to me as really the system and study of human thought itself. And so finally got my degree in philosophy, and I had always been kind of an armchair politico. I always liked American politics. Really interested me. I came from a family, a house divided. Half the family voted one week. Half the family canceled out the votes of the other half of the family at the ballot box every time. And so I really grew up understanding really both political perspectives. So that's the good thing there. And really started about 2014, 2015 is where we really started seeing some political shifts that were new and things that, from a philosophical perspective, kind of a meta perspective, if you will, over just policy talking points, we really started seeing some dynamic shifts in politics. And
I think everybody places it right around that time. That is true. It's I'm in my 50s and having seen a lot over the decades, but it's definitely different now.
For sure. So yeah, that was kind of the advent, and really seeing those ideological shifts, and now we're getting to see them kind of blossom now into a level of political polarization that we haven't seen, and into really, I think the best way to describe it is, the political system that I grew up in was maybe the two parties are arguing over tax rates or arguing over the best way to best serve a social policy, but we're moving forward in this American vision, right? And this, what are we going to do that's best for the country? And we really see this political divide completely breaking apart, where it's two different visions for the future of the country.
And I do think that, yeah, exactly. It's we used to, like you said, and I think several talking heads and talk show hosts on either side of the aisle, so to speak, have all placed it at that it used to be arguments over just, we wanted to go to the same place, but just arguments over how we got there. And now it's totally, yeah, you're right, two different visions for the future of the country.
Yeah. So, and I think that's really where we're, and I think that one of the reasons that I felt an urgency to write this book and get it out there is, one, I felt like I had a very unique perspective as we're, like I said, getting past the policy points and really breaking into the philosophical ideas that underpin both political camps at this point. And then you also see the rise of what probably in the past we would have attributed to kind of a Western liberal democratic order, of basic sensibilities and wanting to serve people in the best way possible. And we've really seen that begin to morph into a sense of globalism. And so you have a lot of these different initiatives, particularly like the World Economic Forum, and you're starting to see these non-governmental organizations like that start to really create this narrative around globalism being better, right? Us all needing to come together as a world just to tackle these huge problems. And no matter what you think about the climate or anything like that, right? That there is a very consistent narrative about what the problem is and what the solution is. And for me, I'm a skeptic of everything. I want to know who's getting paid, and I want to know who it makes sense to. And I think that's very important when we're trying to weigh out all of these moving political forces.
And I agree with you as someone who, has run an NGO, dealing with environmental issues and becoming greatly disheartened. I think you said the magic term of who's getting paid, and because it was really disheartening and eye-opening from a nonprofit perspective to realize that, grants drive a lot of actions, whether it be, on the NGO side and their perspective on issues, or heck, even scientifically now, which I think science has done themselves a great disservice, obviously.
Right. Yeah, and not just in the realm of climate.
Right. And it is. It's and I guess it was, not to be cliche about it, but you show me who's funding the grant and I'll tell you what answer they're going to get.
Exactly.
So, well,
Yeah.
what's and yeah, I really encourage everybody to give Teddy a follow on X, and of course his screen name will be in the description of the show for you and everything. But as we begin to talk about his book, Dethrone Davos, I got fascinated by it and reached out to Teddy, and I really wanted to have him on the show. Not the least of which because it's timely, obviously, with the presidential election cycle we're in. But what was the impetus, and the research basis as you began putting your work together?
Yeah. So, like I said, I've kind of been an armchair politico for ever, and the American form of government deeply fascinated me. Really liked histories, particularly U.S. history. And so, like I said, I came from it from a systematic standpoint of this is how our government was founded. These were the premises that our founders had, and how close are we to that original model? And that's fine. We live 250 years later. Some things are going to change, right? And we're going to have to face challenges that the founders would not have been able to conceive. But really just recognizing that what we have, not only what we have now because of what has been built over the last 60, 70 years of the modern age, but then also, asking the question, right, where does this end? What's the logical conclusion to this particular shift in the American experiment? And
well, I'll tell you. Yeah, and that's what fascinated me about the work, and definitely wanted to have you on. Well, man, Teddy, look, I have to refill my cocktail, but let's everybody fill one up and get to know Teddy's work in a few seconds as we take a little mid-roll commercial break, Teddy. But please, when we come back, let's tear into Dethrone Davos, man. I appreciate it.
Let's do it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, just a real quick mid-roll break, super fast. Please, if you haven't checked out our other show, After Hours Live, that we simulcast on both X and Rumble Live, I wanted to give you the chance to please check us out. A lot of fun, great conversation, hot topics, news, and we just have a good time. So grab yourself a cocktail and follow us at rumble.com, After Hours Live, and here on X.
America stands at the brink. An unstable economy, divided politics, and cultural chaos threaten to push us over the edge. Dethrone Davos is your compass through the coming storm. This eye-opening book uncovers the powerful undercurrents reshaping our world. From the madness of Wall Street to the partisan battles on Capitol Hill, it connects the dots between the economic, political, and social upheavals we face. Dethrone Davos doesn't just diagnose our nation's ills, it charts a new course for America's future. In this book, you will gain a clearer view of the forces obscuring the path ahead. You will understand why the economy breeds unease and culture wars rage. And you will learn how to make sense of partisan divides and restore order to the nation. Dethrone Davos reveals a bold vision for righting the ship. No longer a passenger, you will have the insights to take the wheel and steer America towards renewed prosperity. Don't just watch history unfold. Read Dethrone Davos and help rewrite our future.
Oh, man. I tell you, I like it.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I was fascinated when I came across you and your work, and like I said, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you give Teddy a follow because he's actually a fun guy to interact with as well. But yeah, so man, by all means, Teddy, give us a you know, give us some insight into the work and let us know about it, bud.
For sure. So the structure of the book, put it into three different parts. And it's by no mistake, obviously. Part one really focus on the economic realities that we're facing in the world today, and linking those into the global economy, which used to be the American economy. Certainly, we have a global economy now, and recognizing the driving forces within that framework, and recognizing the level of control that different groups and parties have. And that begins to, as we said earlier about who's getting paid, definitely helps understand those dynamics, who's driving them, and then underlying beliefs therein. And so you roll into part two of the book, and that's really about the political structure that surrounds the economic realities, right? Because the economy is good. You can read data all day long, but ultimately the economy has to be for something, right? It's and that's when you get into really talking about policy and politics, and how we as a politic view the economy, what its underlying purpose is for, all of those good things. And it links these globalist endeavors, these wealthy groups of people that control so much of our global economy, and it shows how their underlying premises and ideologies are linked to the global communist movement. And so you would think, if you have a bunch of wealthy people who are pulling the strings of the world economy, and they're really trying to use that economic mechanism to control the world, if you will, to basically have a soft coup and a takeover, you would think that the last people they'd want to partner with are a bunch of communists who are, all about knocking down the bourgeoisie, right? And so it's a really critical aspect of understanding these economic players. They're operating the World Economic Forum, which wasn't elected by anybody, but seems to feel like they need to inject themselves into politics around the world. And you understand why this World Economic Forum has this group that they call their young global leaders. And you start looking at these young global leaders, and they are actually powerful people in politics. Macron in France, Trudeau in Canada. The Obamas are linked deeply with the World Economic Forum, and the list goes on. But you say, well, these people are all espousing some form of collectivism. Now, why on earth would that be the case? And so part two of the book is very important in explaining that dynamic, which basically is that communism, it's a brilliant idea. Marx was by no means a dummy, but the idea of communism is simply that. It's an idea, and the second that you try to inject this concept of equity into a government, into a hierarchy, you give up the game. You abandon the entire premise altogether. As soon as someone's in charge, they are above everyone else. We've abandoned this concept of equity. And so what these very wealthy elite people realize is that when you actually play the communist game out, what you have is a top-down, centrally planned bureaucracy with an extreme amount of political control. And as it turns out, if you can implement those countries in governments around the world, and they're all friendlies to you, they're all ascribed to your economic plan, and they know that if they go against the grain economically, that country could be sanctioned, and to the point that if a leader ever dared stand up to the World Economic Forum and their kind of global rule, the government could then be sanctioned by the economy and by this global economy and these world leaders, and they know that they'd have a coup on their hands in 48 hours, right? That people would revolt if they didn't have access to money and goods and services that we rely on in this global economy. And so those are the first two parts. I know that's a lot of information. It rolls into the third part, but anyway.
And those first two parts are critical, because I think, and again, I try to remain objective and try not to be too cliche, but I know, my generation and people our age recognize almost immediately all the aspects of the old Soviet Union that they had our entire society railing against, during the Reagan years and the Cold, and during the Cold War era, basically, through that entire period. I mean, it was everything we see today, and from this collectivist and equity versus equality,
Right.
it's totally recognizable to people like us who fought the Cold War and made the wall fall. We recognize it, so it's an interesting dynamic that's occurred in our country, like you said, politically, and I, like I said, it's been subtle for decades, but it's been since 2015, around that time frame, it's accelerated exponentially,
Yeah, certainly. And so that is a really good comparison and opening up for part 3, because you're right. We had a lot clearer eyes about what communism was and where it fit into the political framework. And I think one of the challenges for us in this modern age is that the lessons of communism come with a lot of lessons from the Cold War, and how America and other countries were able to have such a strong resolve against this concept. And so the tactics have changed on implementation and slowly bringing people along in the program, if you will.
Right. And well, I have found, of course it's anecdotal, but watching my children attend universities, I've noticed that's a huge part of it. Is just that subtle, and for fear of being called a conspiracy theorist, but there is a certain amount of indoctrination. Including in their lessons, in the papers they had to write. They leaned a certain way whether they agreed or not in their papers, because they knew their grade hinged on it a lot of times.
Yeah, for sure. So I say in one of the lines in the book, which I thought was a clever turn of phrase, I said, the book is a narrative, and I'm not gonna pretend that it doesn't come with my own biases and opinions and point of view. And I think it's very clear in the book, but I say theoretically this is a conspiracy theory. I just feel like I'm seeing clearly what's going on in the world, and that really breaks open part 3, which is really looking at the philosophy behind it, looking at the first premises of communism, the first premises of the American system, and recognizing that the American system is different than other Western liberal democracies. It's truly unique, and it was a truly unique challenge for the true believers, which I pool into the group. I call them in the book the global communist movement, and that's just the true believers, the people who bring Marxist communism and those arguments and rhetoric into their daily political and professional lives, So that group is a very committed group. A lot of the subterfuge happened because we had spies from Soviet Russia come, and infiltrate different groups within America. But you really start breaking down and breaking that open and really looking at the ideology underneath that underlies both of those systems. We're going to have to understand and see that clearly, because I do believe that within the next 10 years, there isn't. It was wonderful when we had a middle, right? It was wonderful when Democrats and Republicans both went and watched the Lion King animated one, and that was the summer blockbuster, and stayed up way too late over the summer. And, we have anybody who grew up in the 90s or before can really appreciate the sense that we had a cohesive middle, right? There were people on both sides of the political aisle. There were certain levels of extremism, but at the end of the day, Democrat or Republican, we were going to sit around the table, have dinner together, and not rip each other's heads off. There weren't pieces in the New York Times about how you can survive Thanksgiving with your MAGA uncle,
Right.
And really, one of the things that is still very much alive in the pundit class that I'm hearing is this idea that we're going to have to rediscover this middle and love it or hate it, enjoy one side more than the other. I do believe that we're going to have to choose, and it's primarily because we have an untenable situation. It's made untenable on purpose, and the concept is not to make people uncomfortable and then go back to a normal stasis. We're going to live in one future or the other. We're either going to continue being America, or we'll continue to have the same borders, and we'll call the states the same names, and generally everything will look the same, except it just won't be. We will have transgressed the traditional values or the American form of government that we founded, and we will be living in a pseudo socialist state. And by that, I just mean that we're going to continue to pile on the fourth branch of government. The fourth branch of government is going to continue to have more regulatory power over our lives. And the progressive experiment that we're seeing play out before our very eyes at a certain convention that's going on right now. But
you mean the one that has an incredible wall built around it because it works? No.
Yes, of course. Well, we don't want to compromise their safety, right? It's just the hoi polloi that.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, Teddy, like I said, when I came across your work, I was just fascinated, especially given the times we're in. And I do think, we are at one of those crossroads. There's no mistake about it, so by all means, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, go give Teddy a follow on X, please, by all means, and check out his new work, just out July, Dethrone Davos. It's available on Amazon for order, and of course, the links to his website will be in the description. And I highly, highly recommend everybody check it out as we come up to this grand November we're about to to approach. So well, Teddy, man, I'll tell you what, I really look forward, and hopefully we could talk you into coming on our other show, After Hours Live, with me and producer Drunk Doug, buddy. We'll we'll have
I'm all for it.
Yeah, we have a lengthier version, long form. But Teddy, I really appreciate you taking the time, buddy. Coming to you from my great Gulf Coast sister state of Texas, and I look forward to seeing your work be successful. But I appreciate you here.
Thank you very much, George. I appreciate it. Like I said, the honor's all mine, and Godspeed, my friend. Keep up the good work.
All right, bud. Cheers.
Cheers.